Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's American Mussar Community Gathering. This week will be our first week exploring the soul trait of silence. This is a little bit out of order. I usually go in the order of chapters in the book. And after loving kindness and truth, there was an awful lot about what to say, what not to say. Is it kind? Is it truthful? Those aren't always indicators that we should or should not speak. So it seemed like a really nice kind of unit to put the three of those together. But first, we are going to begin with a meditation as we always do. So please relax and close your eyes and take in a nice deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass, like watching a car pass by on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Okay. Well, we will begin this week with a question. Sorry, I'm not on the right slide here. Something that we have probably seen before, but maybe we'll look at it a little bit, not only thinking about silence, but also thinking about truth and kindness. So may I have a volunteer to unmute and read this?
I will.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Just what's up here? The word, excuse me, the words of the wise spoken softly are accepted.
Great, thank you. So that's from Ecclesiastes. So what does that say to you? Sort of thinking about what's there, what's not there. I'll cut and paste this into the chat so you can percolate on it some more. So we're not sharing. Sue.
I really like the spoken softly part
Mhm.
because I think about when I get into an argument and I get my voice is raised and I start screaming, and that's not a good way to go. Basically. So, softly and not giving in to the emotions. I feel like
Yeah.
when I go off a handle, my voice gets louder and
Yeah.
emotions are taking over. and I'm not speaking softly.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. It kind of reminds me sometimes, theoretically, not that I'm saying this happens in my marriage, but sometimes perhaps the husband raises their voice and it's like, you yelled at me. I didn't yell at you. I was just speaking louder, but it's whatever the case, it's not being heated. Sue, or sorry, Bonnie.
So I read that a little bit more expansively in
Mhm.
that not only did I listen to the tone, but it's something that I learned when I was head of school and I was evaluating teachers, which is making sure that the positive statements came first.
Mm,
And that made a tremendous difference. I had fabulous staff, fabulous.
mm,
But everybody, I think there's nothing that I do in life that I can't do better. But I've learned that it's not just the tone, which I absolutely agree with that statement from Ecclesiastics, but making sure the positive comes first. And then you can say, I'd like you to consider, or whatever you want to say about making some changes.
mhm.
So wasn't written, but it's what was in my brain.
No, well, I think these words are a gateway, so it's not, I think you're very much on point. So thank you. Nancy, and then Wendy. So Nancy, if you could remember to unmute, there
Sorry.
you go.
I think it hit me differently because something happened this past weekend when I was with some friends.
Mhm.
And to me, it means being wise to know when to speak.
Mm,
And I had some things happen this weekend, and I thought I was being really, really good about being judgmental.
mm,
And I found that I didn't think what I said was judgmental. It was my opinion or my perspective. And there were three of us. And I found we all differed. And
mm,
they brought it to my attention that I am so aware of the minutia of everything. So I can tell you things that other people would never notice. And
mm,
when I would say it, it would almost be, wow, that sounds so negative. And I really had to kind of bite my tongue.
mm,
So now I know we've talked about silence before. And I think I've mentioned it at other times that we talked or, had our class that I need to be quiet now, but I don't want to be so quiet that I don't engage in a conversation. But I'm
mhm,
finding that my perspectives are so drastically different
mm,
than other people because I notice, am aware of so many different things than most people are not.
mm,
And I think that's a big thing in what this is. So to me, it's like, I feel I'm the wise one. I better be silent
mm.
and know when to speak because it's going to ruffle somebody else's feathers.
Yeah. So softly can be almost a metaphor for the impact on other people.
Mm-hmm.
And Nancy, if you don't mind my asking, I'm hearing, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm hearing a little bit of a connection to, we've been talking about truth and kindness, but I'm hearing a little bit of a connection to truth, in the spectrum of truth from too little to too much. And do you feel there's a connection to that soul trait as well?
You know what? I do. And something happened where when I'm around certain people who are in my life right now, um, I'm a completely different person.
Mm,
And my truth, it's really, really interesting you said that, Greg, because my truth comes out as positive, filled with the divine, filled with the
mm,
universe. But with these other people who I was with, it's the complete opposite. It comes
mm,
across very negative to them.
mm.
And then it was three of us. And I don't like threesomes because somebody is always left out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so it's like, well, two are ganging up on the one. And I think that my truth needs to be watched when I'm with these people because of how they take things. And they're extremely vulnerable and sensitive. whereas the other, they are in a different way.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could share something later that happened, which has to do with silence, also truth and the divine, but that can be later.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy. Wendy.
I think the writer was setting up a protocol for the enthusiast because,
Mm,
I teeter-totter on that enthusiasm spectrum it's pretty over on one end. And so I was thinking, this is for me because sometimes there might be some kind of meeting going on and there might be some ideas being bandied back and forth, or some decisions to make. And I think I have a good idea.
mm,
So really, enthusiasm sometimes makes you get a little loud. I mean,
mm,
wait, do this, do that. So really, if, like you were saying, Nancy, this tells me when to come up with my wisdom. Maybe it's not my wisdom, but it's something I see.
Mhm.
And a little bit, softer voice, maybe not tentative, but maybe a little softer voice, and it's accepted. The thing is, it's accepted. I think that's a good word there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that reminds me of like one of the things I touched on earlier, like some of the things it doesn't say, that like words that are true are accepted. Doesn't say that. Doesn't say words of kindness are accepted. It doesn't. So it's kind of brings together, wisdom, how you deliver it. It's wisdom and how you deliver it. And wisdom may or may not be fully true, or it may not be the complete truth. And maybe the wisest thing to do is to say, you know what, this isn't the right audience for this. Hey, Joanne.
Hi.
So I'll put in the chat what we're talking about. Any other comments? Yeah, Sarah.
I was just going to say that it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what I thought. And I agree with what everybody else is saying. But I think that the delivery, if the delivery isn't gentle and kind,
Mm-hmm.
or, not in your face
Mm-hmm.
or in your face, it really makes a difference, how information is received.
Yeah.
So I think that, and I certainly need a lot of practice with this one.
Yeah. I don't know. Ecclesiastes, the main character's Kohelet, and tradition says it was written by King Solomon. And all I can think is, he obviously never visited Manhattan, because
You think it's a New York thing?
words spoken softly is not really the New York way. Wendy.
Just as Sarah was talking, I was thinking, used car salesman, you know how they talk at you and they, no, this is right, it's true, trust me, all this, trying to get you to believe something. And that's when you're not going to accept it at all.
Mm,
So, if you really want to get your point across, it's best to keep it a little bit lower key, which I
yeah,
have to do myself all the time.
true. True, yeah. No, the car salesmen are not very trusted. And we had one guy who was just very quiet, very matter of fact, and he was much more trustworthy than an average car salesman. So it's a good point. Joanne.
Well, I was at a Zoom board meeting last night for my shul, and I felt I was being dismissed
Hmm.
because the person who was speaking is a professional in this area, investments and blah, blah, blah. Because, I had told the board a few times, and the then treasurer met with my investment banker. I mean, he's at Chase, so he's not getting, I mean, I don't know that he gets commissions but he took such good care of me. And I'm certainly not a wealthy person, because this guy would think, oh, they just ignore you because synagogue had a UBS account that went down by like $40,000 or $50,000. And we don't know why.
Hmm.
And I said, no, my guy was really great with me, and
Mhm.
he did my risk aversion, and he did a beautiful job, and I made money every year on it. So this guy was saying, and I said, listen. So I got angry, of course, because
Mm.
that's what I do. So I got louder, and I said, listen, I have an MBA. I know what I'm talking about. You know, my investment did very well. Morris, who was the treasurer, met with this guy. He liked him too. But there was a committee. And of course, the committee, everybody wants their guy to be in charge. So nothing happened. And as a result, nothing happened,
Mm.
as usual. So anyway, sometimes you have to, I don't know, speak softly and carry a big stick, or you just have to be loud. If you're a woman, might be a little different. Though my mother, I have to say, was very good at being very soft-spoken and very sweet to my son, I guess, and probably to my ex-husband too. Oh, da 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 da. You know, so they liked her a lot.
Mm.
She didn't raise her voice to them. This wasn't my experience as a child, but
Mm.
it was fine. That's it.
Well, maybe she learned some lessons along the way. Yeah, thank you, Joanne. Okay, so let's go, let's look at some definitions of silence. And again, would someone like to unmute? And we'll deal with these two separately. So if someone could,
I will.
okay, thank you.
The primary Mussar guideline for speech is not whether something is true or not whether not or but or not but whether what impacts our words will have. I'm sorry. Is it me or is that sentence awkward?
It's a little awkward. I
If
didn't write it. It's just
no, I
just
know.
for the record.
We're not blaming you. It's just a weird.
Missing a
Yes, I should
comma,
have.
missing a comma after not. See,
Yes, yes. Okay, so let me reread it. Thank you. The primary Mussar guideline for speech is not whether something is true or not, but rather what impact our words will have. If our speech will cause financial, physical, psychological, or other harm, even anxiety or fear, then we are enjoined to hold our tongues. Thank you for that comma.
Yes, thank you, Wendy, for that. Okay, so this is from Alan Moranis in Everyday Holiness. So according to Moranis, what is kind of our guideline for when we should talk or not?
It seems like whether or not we'll have a bad, you know, what our impact will be, and if it's going to be
Mhm.
negative or not.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And Nancy, I saw your hand and then Wendy.
Oh, I was just thinking, because of what happened and what is happening in my life, is really consider the audience.
Mm.
If it's going to be relevant to them and if
Mhm.
they're going to understand where you were coming from. If not, don't say anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Considering the audience, considering the impact. Wendy, what would you like to add?
well, in the book, in Greg's book, it talks about, and this is kind of different than I thought. It's not really about your intention, but how it will impact. So maybe, like you were talking about, Nancy, with the differences between the groups of friends, your intention might be good, but you do have to kind of sit back and think about how it's going to impact, which is not
Yeah.
always easy to do, but I know I remember that from the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's different. That's different than kind of the prevailing American culture, I think. Well, I meant well. He meant well, but this person's sobbing, you know. That's Bonnie.
So I mentioned this to Greg previously. A number of us, three of us, and I know Harry was in this discussion a couple of weeks ago, is when we're talking to our adult kids. And I have a magnet that I picked up in Indiana when I was out there to visit one of my kids' family, and it has a picture of a woman's face and a pizza. And it says, the difference between the pizza and your opinion is I asked for pizza. So the piece that's, I really think that's missing from that
Mm,
is and this is what I have learned with a very difficult granddaughter.
mm,
Rarely is she asking my opinion.
mm,
She just wants to put it out there and see how I'll react. And now I will say, well, what do you think?
mm.
Primarily, I will say, are you asking for my opinion? My kids are now in their 40s going into 50s. They're very clear whether
Yeah.
they want it or not. And I've had to really step back. So I think that piece, I don't know, I don't remember whether it's later on in that chapter, but I think it's really important for me.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's a nice humility tie-in as well. You know, when we speak, when we don't speak, you know, if I'm giving advice that isn't wanted, that's taking up too much space. So we will go to Sue and then Harry, and we'll also say hi to Marianne. Hello and welcome.
So when it talks about causing financial harm or psychological harm, it seems to me that you really have to know the person that you're talking to
Mm,
understand that. So that was it, and it was more. So then, if you're going to abide by that, it's more important that you either ask a question or understand them before you impart your wisdom.
yeah,
But it doesn't always work out that way, because when you're in a discussion and you want to give some financial advice, you might not know that that's going to cause them harm. So
mhm,
that was sort of my question there, is how do you, I guess you really have to know, it's important to know the person you're talking to and whether it's really going to hurt them.
yeah.
And we don't always know that. So
No, we don't. We don't for sure. Thank you. Harry.
Yeah, I think what Bonnie was talking about regarding dealing with adult kids and what she said about asking for an opinion, we're in the realm of what we call boundaries. Is really
Mhm.
is really what it is. And when you overstep your boundaries, because as parents, you have to remember, the really kids growing up, we had all the boundaries. There were no boundaries. And you did it on, and your advice is giving out of loving, you're coming out of loving kindness
Mhm,
is why you react and you make those suggestions. But
mhm.
um, we're, they're now adults, and it's the game has changed, and
Yeah,
that's sometimes really hard to adjust to. But that's really the story is the boundaries,
yeah,
and as you raise kids, those boundaries get further and further away.
yeah. Well said. You know, it reminds me of a few weeks ago, I was in it was our weekly prayer service in school. It's almost, you know, occasionally we'll do Zoom messages back and forth. And I try to avoid it, but someone was, you know, I hadn't seen in a while and was checking in, and it had twins that were preemies. So I was asking about them. And then she sent me this message which went on this whole thing about the war in Israel and this and this. And I'm like, you know, you're assuming that I agree with you on it. And this was sort of like, uh, to me, felt like a boundary violation because, you know, we went beyond the chit chat or I'm glad your kids are healthy to, you know, and this was something that was upsetting to this person. And I get that, but it really felt inappropriate to me to kind of bring up at that point. And you know, I just chose to handle it by not responding and just going on. But it was like, oh, so because it's hard, it's kind of a little bit related to what Sue's question is too. Like, do they know what, how that's going to land. You don't always know, but that's why we call it silence and not speech, I think. They're tipping their hand about which way we should err, perhaps. Let's read the second bullet, because I think that's a really interesting one in conversation with the first.
I mean, you are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be. And Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop the share. So Reb Nachman, he's got a different idea. Maybe he's talking about a different type of silence. Maybe not. What is his focus? And I'll put this in the chat again so people can percolate on it a little more.
You should say want, not want.
Want to be, thank you. Oh, I can't correct it there. We'll go back and correct it on the slide just so I don't forget about it. 2 typos on this slide, not good. Okay. So what is Reb Nachman talking about? Sue.
I'll give it a shot. That actually makes me think of something I'm trying to practice more of, Hanani, being in the moment and not thinking about other things. Worries and frustrations. I'm not sure how that goes along with being silent, but the idea that we're not going to make sure your thoughts are where they want to be. Don't blow things out of proportion and start, worrying about everything and saying, okay, everything is fine right now. I'm not sure though that maybe your question is how that ties into silence. Is that what you're?
Yeah, a little bit, or reactions. And what I'm hearing is you're sort of working it through. And a piece of it is you're saying, okay, well, if my head is kind of running into all these worries and stuff, that kind of feels a little related to this. What else? Yeah, Joanne. Remember to unmute, please.
So I've been trying to say the Amida from Mincha every day. So Amida is supposed to be silent. If I don't actually mouth the words or say them softly, my mind is definitely going to get off track and start thinking about something else. And I realize I have to pay really close attention because there's a point in the middle of some of the prayers, like the prayer for health, where you're supposed to stop and do Misha Berach if that's what you want to do at that point. And I want to do it, but a couple of times I've just read all right through and I said, oh, shoot, and I asked my rabbi, I said, you could say it at the end if you do. But I've been trying to be more careful. So I guess it's called kavanah, intention, and to keep that intention going, even through, it's not so long, it's like less than 10 minutes or something like that during the week. I think it's shorter on Shabbos. But to keep your thoughts focused on what you're reading and what it means, and it's really hard.
Not easy.
Not easy.
Yeah. So if you're kind of in that state where your mind is kind of going through these worry cycles, is that sort of quiet speech in your mind or loud speech? I mean, to me, it feels like the way I think about it is kind of feels like it's sort of shouting, or I can't it's hard to stop listening to it if I really get worked up and really start spinning around. Yeah, Sue.
I think of that as more like clutter. It's not clear.
Yeah. Yeah. You think of it as clutter. I mean, I think that Wendy.
I'm glad you said clutter, because I was just thinking about how kids with a toy, and if there's 60 different toys all around them, they get distracted from that toy. And so it's a responsibility for us to take away the things that are distracting us from what we need to be focused on, which if it's that rabbi, it's probably righteousness. But I'm just saying, and keep it's mindfulness, but it's also a responsibility for us too.
Mhm. Yeah, so mindfulness, that's a great word to kind of bring into this conversation. Is mindfulness something that relates to kind of external speech as well? Yeah, Sarah.
I think that so often when we're having conversations with others, or maybe just I will speak for myself, instead of listening, you're thinking about what you want to say next.
Mm.
And so therefore you really are not listening,
Mhm.
and that's not a good quality. That's not a good communication strategy. If you really want to understand and be understood, then you need to listen.
So if your thoughts are, to go back to Reb Nachman, if your thoughts are on, okay, I'm going to say this in response, and you really want to be listening, your thoughts are not there. They're somewhere else.
Right.
Thoughts are on in a different place.
You might not even get to hear the whole idea because you're already somewhere else
Yeah.
with what. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I have to say, I was with some friends over the weekend and someone was talking about something and then they paused and I started to make a comment and they immediately jumped in as like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I just like, I hadn't said anything in about 15 minutes. And I was like, hey, you just interrupted me. And they went like, and they were quite, I, I, I apologized later for, kind of being abrupt, but they're like, no, it's a bad habit. But sometimes because it doesn't feel good when someone is jumping in and it was like, hey, I had an idea. I wanted to contribute to this conversation. So yeah, when go ahead, Sarah.
I was going to say, is it a monologue or a dialogue?
Right. Right. Exactly. Wendy.
Sarah, I'm so glad you said monologue and dialogue. So you're listening to a dialogue that you're hearing a monologue. Because the dialogue's coming in, but you're like almost retranslating it for yourself. It's about yourself and about what you're how you're going to react and respond.
I'm so glad we've engaged on this because I really think that it is fine to say, yeah, we need to think about the impact of our words, but unless we're doing the second, unless we're really, focusing in on listening and keeping ourselves in the moment and in the space, then I don't think we can do all the things that were kind of listed on the top. I'll put up the whole slide again and we could see it together for just a second. And then I was going to have us move on unless anyone has a comment they'd like to make after we see the two together. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting in this spirit of kind of reviewing loving kindness and truth to kind of look at the spectrum diagrams for each of these. And so for loving kindness, if we're too little, selfishness, self-centeredness, not thinking about the other person, too much, excessive doting, lack of self-care. Let me start thinking about how would silence kind of play with this. And we'll go to the next one, the spectrum of truth. Too little truth, speaking falsehoods, eroding trust, too much hurtful speech. I think we felt a lot of connections to silence and truth. And then we have our spectrum of silence. Our too little silence, you know, we could get to hurtful speech, which, as we were talking about earlier, might be inadvertent, might be accidental. Maybe we meant well, but it may have been the impact was not good. And of course, too much silence is not good either. You know, the story of creation, right? God spoke the universe, the world into existence. You know, we create the world with our speech. And if we're too silent, maybe we've lost an opportunity to bring kindness to someone, or we've lost an opportunity to speak out about an injustice. So the mantra is, you know, what benefit will my speech bring me or others, which is from the book Heshbon HaNefesh. So I'm going to stop the share here and kind of open it up for thoughts, reactions. Did anything any interesting connections come up with you? Yeah, for you, Stephanie, yes.
Hi. So I was just thinking about what everybody has said, and listening is a big topic to me. I don't care who you are, what you do. Listening is something that we all could do a better job at. I mean, across the board in politics and whatever it is. I'm a teacher. I deal with this all the time. I have things I want to say to my students, and a lot of times they don't listen. People I know I can say things and I don't think they're hearing me. It's something that, you know, it's like something that can be difficult when you feel you have something to say and you want to be heard. And but the same thought I'm having is that also you do have to understand who the person is, and maybe some of the things that you're saying, another person, either they can't handle it or it's not something that they want to hear. Like if you're from two very different backgrounds, or you're talking about apples and they all only know about oranges as their favorite things. I mean, it can be difficult depending on what subject you're going into. But I know that being heard is, to me, it's like a gift, knowing that you can give somebody, that you can really take the time, slow down, kind of leave off all the things that you're going through and just really hear a person, listen to them and hear the person. To me, that's like a gift. And it's something that I feel when I really feel heard, I feel like I've received something that's very special. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you. I think that's really lovely and powerful. And it reminds me of something that my mother used to talk about that quite a bit. And, you know, she really felt like listening to people was so important. And it was really one of the ways that she could give to others. Sue.
That was beautiful. It made me think of something that wasn't what I was going to say, but when you, Greg, when you always say, listen, I'm listening with an open heart. I love that because it just makes you feel good that you're actually listening and your heart's open. So what Stephanie said reminded me of that, but that wasn't what my comment was, but there you go. My comment is that I was thinking with the two quotes that it's really your intention that matters. Like, why am I speaking? And I was remembering this wait, wait before you speak. And it's, why am I talking?
Mm.
And what's the value here? Why am I saying anything? And I think that's really important to remember, because maybe it's important to just listen with an open heart and not say anything and just say, I understand. and I hear you, rather than to speak. So WAIT is the acronym. Why am I talking? WAIT.
Thank
So
you.
wait before you speak. Yeah, okay.
That is a great acronym for this moment. Wendy.
I just thought about when we talk about, we've talked about it in Mussar before, in comforting the mourner, how you don't talk first. You just wait to find out what they need. And that's what you were talking about, Sue. And I was thinking of the same thing. My sister-in-law, she's had brain surgery and she's not doing well. So my husband's getting ready to go back east to be with her. And I was just thinking about how when I was able to talk to her, she will tell you what she wants. And she wanted her cousin to sing because he's a singer, and she wanted various things from different people. And I thought that was really beautiful, the way that you expressed it, Sue, about waiting.
Thank you. Well, one of the most important, and as far as I'm concerned, the most important part of Mussar practice is the practice. And so I think we've had a really opening, generative conversation. So for the breakout rooms, we're going to talk about like what it is that you want to kind of focus on for the next week. So I'm going to put up the list of possible actions. So I'll read these slowly. You can have your eyes closed and sort of make this a meditation, or you can read along, but really allow kind of your mind to really focus on this and to see what it maybe inspires an action that you'll take. And then we'll go into breakout rooms and you can share kind of what it is, the one change you'd like to make. So be mindful of what you say and the words you use. Speak of behavior, not character. Listen more than you talk if you're a talker. Speak out if you're in the habit of keeping your thoughts to yourself. Say only positive things about other people. Do not participate in gossip. Create a time of silence. Meditate longer. Don't yell or speak harshly. Okay, so while I get the breakout room set up, just stop and think about what's the one thing you're going to focus on in this next week. Okay, so the rooms are open. And you'll each have a few minutes to share. Hello, welcome back. Wow, you're in different places on the screen. So I'm curious, what would anyone care to share their practice for the next week, or something interesting that came up in discussion? Yes, Nancy. And then Marianne.
Well, I had two. And actually, when we just finished, I think what we were talking about is if you cannot be totally honest or truthful with somebody, like a good friend, these are really good friends that I was with, then you're not showing your true integrity and who you really are. But that's one thing. But my two things were say only nice, what does it say? Say only positive things about other people, because that's what I was doing on the TV and on the Chiefs game and on the halftime. And I'm like, look at that chunky person singing, or look at that awful pantsuit he's wearing, but look at that beautiful ring she's wearing. And everybody's going like, oh my gosh, you notice every detail, but
Mm.
it's like, you know what? Zip it, Nancy.
Mhm.
Only say positive things because they were taking it so negatively. And
Mm.
the other is do not participate in gossip. And but there were three of us. This person would go through the bathroom or go change clothes or God knows what, or take the dog outside. And this person's like, well, did she talk about me last night? You know, what did she say about me last night? And I then feel like I'm in the middle. I
Mm.
don't want to say, well, yes, she did or no, she didn't. You know, so it's like, do not participate in gossip about anybody, which is really hard to do,
It is.
and only say nice things. Because I thought sharing experiences with a friend is not gossip, but now I'm finding that almost everything you say to somebody is gossiping unless it's about an idea. But if it's about somebody else, it's gossiping. And I'm like, really? Even if it's positive? So those are my two.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Nancy. And Rabbi Joseph Telushkin wrote this great book, Words That Hurt, Words That Heal. And he pointed out that when we're gossiping, we're losing an opportunity to connect with the person we're talking to. Because instead of getting to know them better, you're talking about some third party. Marianne, you had your hand up earlier, and then Janos.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm going to try to speak up more because I don't speak up as much as I really would like to. And I almost always say positive things about people, but I'm just going to keep an extra eye on that to make sure I'm still doing that.
Great. Thank you, Marianne. Janos.
I came up with a couple of suggestions that actually I learned that when I'm polite, I could be faking it. I can act. And then I also was thinking that, well, when I've been listening, actually being silent, and if I'm passively aggressive, that's not really silence. I'm just punishing somebody in a way. I just smile and nod and say nothing.
Yeah.
You know, that could think. And lastly, I think that's very interesting. When we are listening, we need to be aware that we listen with our beliefs and values. And then other people who have different beliefs and different values, they will not get us and we will not get them. So we need to open up to that one.
Yeah. I so love, especially your second point about just smiling and nodding and being passive aggressive and that not being silent, because silence is all about communication. And so you're communicating something, what did I say? I didn't say anything. Why are you mad? But you both know what's going on there. So yeah, that's powerful. That is powerful. Anyone else care to? Yes, Joanne. If you could remember to unmute, please. Joanne, if you could unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that was not the kind of silence we were looking for. So
that would have been funny in a way. Being mindful of what I say and how I say it. Speak of behavior, not character, but I don't know if I do or don't do these things. Say only positive things. I'm likely to more say positive things to a stranger than to someone at a board meeting. But sometimes I do. One time I did respond, somebody said we should, the president of the board said we should, I don't know, applaud for something or other. And so I did. And this other person across the table was looking daggers at me. And I was like, not loud enough for her to respond to it. What, that's really, even in silence, giving somebody a dirty look is like really a terrible.
Yeah,
it's really terrible. That's what I'm saying.
I really feel like I got to create like a whole new bullet point to talk about this kind of passive aggressive or silent negative communication or silent positive communication, sort of the really genuine smile and nod. These are huge, huge communications. Wendy.
Okay, so this is mine. I'm going to meditate longer in order to create a time of silence,
Mhm.
in order to prepare to wait and be mindful by asking questions first.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, when we're in the habit of meditating, it can help us at other times to just be a little bit more thoughtful. Toby, we haven't heard from you much today. I want to just give you a chance if you'd like to add something. No requirement, but
I think this is a really interesting area because I think you hit on the idea of nonverbal communications being as powerful as sometimes as words themselves. And I didn't even think about that, but I'm one of these people who is too busy thinking about what I'm going to respond to the next guy to learn, to really listen to them. And that for me that's my practice, is to really concentrate on what the person is saying and not on what my response is going to be.
sounds good. Okay, well, speaking of meditation, we will end today with a silent meditation. Normally it's guided, but we'll just close our eyes, take a deep breath, and relax into silence. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Friends, thank you so much for being here this week. Next week, I will be on vacation. I'm going to Syracuse to visit my family, so we will not be meeting. I'm sorry, I forgot to include that in the email this week. But I will either send like a group newsletter with a reminder, or I'll just send out an email on Thursday with a reminder that we are not meeting. But in 2 weeks, we will be meeting again to continue silence. So I hope you kind of have a good opportunity with your practices, and I will look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. This
Safe
was a
travels.
wonderful session.